Muffin the Mini Horse is the official therapy horse of the Cayce Fire Department. She is the first therapy horse working for a city or government agency in the state of South Carolina. Muffin's handler, Lindsay McDade, spoke to us about how Muffin is used to reduce stigma and open the door to talk about substance abuse disorder, addiction, and connecting people to resources.
So basically, my job was hired with the opioid settlement money that the fire department receives. So specifically, the risk we're addressing is the opioid crisis. And that's just a huge risk compared to fire safety. It's really easy to speak about like, hey, do you have working smoke alarms? Or do you have a fire escape planner? Versus talking about what is addiction, substance use disorder. It's very hard to get community engagement, and people want us to speak about fire safety. People aren't asking us to speak about addiction at their schools and workplaces. So the idea came about is we need a way to engage the community. I have a passion with horses, and I had Muffin. No intentions of ever her being a therapy horse. I was like, what if I trained Muffin to be a therapy horse and she could help engage the community on this really hard topic and just kind of help erase some of that stigma, and it doesn't have to be a hard topic to talk about. So that's kind of the concept of how this all came about.
What kind of training did you need to acquire to become Muffin's handler, and what training did Muffin require?
So Muffin and I went through Pet Partners, which is a therapy organization. They don't just do horses, they do horses, dogs, cats, birds, pigs, and there's a few other species they do. So Muffin had to meet the equine requirements for that, and I had to take a course because how it works is we are both judged in the exam. Like, I'm judged on how I handle Muffin, and Muffin's judged on how she handles the different obstacles and challenges. So it was a huge undertaking. I basically felt like I had to train her to be a dog to pass this test. She spent most of her life outside. She's always been a good girl, but she's never been inside. She had to be potty trained. Just a lot of things you just don't think about she had to get used to, but she really loves people. And I was like, well, let's try it. We'll see how far we get. And here we are. We're an official team now. So,
I understand that Muffin is the first therapy horse working for a city or government agency in South Carolina. Can you explain why there's a benefit to using a miniature horse?
So yeah, basically Muffin is what I had to work with. I didn't have a dog. I do have a dog, but I didn't think she'd be suited for therapy work. There's just a lot of requirements that are required of a dog. But horses are just something that's not typically seen in a public space, and sometimes this is someone's first interaction with a horse is petting Muffin. And horses are also very different than dogs. They're they're herd animals, so they're always in fear of prey. So they very look to their handler or humans to kind of guide them and all that. So they kind of feed off her energy, and they can help self-regulate. When you pet a horse, research has shown it helps self-regulate, lower your heart rate, breathing, reduce anxiety. And it's just, they're very, very therapeutic animals compared to a dog. And they're also very dependent on us. Like if I were to get excited right now, she'd probably get very excited because she's about to fall asleep. But she's very dependent on my energy to be successful. So that's why it's really important, I guess, with the training with a horse. It's just a lot different than a dog since they're prey animals. And a dog's a predator and a horse is a prey animal.
What does it mean to be a registered pet therapy team and animal-assisted intervention?
So basically, we had to go through a process to get to the point where we could be a registered team. I had to take a course. Muffin had to be evaluated by a vet that she was healthy. And then what that means is Pet Partners does the testing, and so it's technically not certification. Certification means a third party would do the testing. Like if you went to medical school, the school wouldn't test you for your doctor's license. There's a medical board that would test you, so then you're actually certified. Currently in the pet therapy world, there is no third party that does that, so that's why it's registered. So basically, we took the Pet Partners handler exam, and we met their expectations and standards, and we actually scored complex, which is the highest rating you can get, so that was very, very exciting. So that's kind of what that means. And then registered, I guess it means we meet their standards. If you go on the Pet Partners website, there's all these different things she had to meet to do therapy work, like I mentioned, like potty training, reliably potty trained. She had to back. They also kind of stress them out in the test to see how they handle things, because we don't want her biting and kicking if she were to get upset. And she did really, really well with all that, even though it was a little stressful to stress her out. But just to show she is reliable and she's not going to do anything bad if she were to get upset. So.
Can you give us some examples of when Muffin might be used? You talked about the AG's office a little bit and human trafficking, and then the library, that kind of thing?
So yeah, we've done multiple partnerships. There's a human trafficking task force that meets at the Cayce airport, the LIMS task force, and we did a day where we took Muffin to the airport and let people take photos with her and passed out little cards that said Muffin has a message, just to raise awareness about human trafficking, because we know that typically victims of human trafficking don't know they're a victim or they don't really want to seek help. So we really rely on the general public to report something if they see suspicious. I'm currently working on a partnership with RADAC to do some more outreach with our drug awareness program. We'll be at the library next week, Cayce, West Columbia, allowing people to pet Muffin and just talk about some of our drug awareness messaging. And we've gone to a few recovery meetings. His house had a little meeting we went to, just trying to encourage them in recovery. And then the Courage Center, we work with them. We went to one of their recovery meetings and try to encourage participants and wherever they are in their recovery journey, just to foster just more like connection and show we care. There's a lot of things we can't do, we're limited by in the fire service, but I can bring a horse and try to make things a little bit better, So.
What, in the middle of a conversation, what can Muffin do to help someone feel more comfortable?
So just petting a horse is very therapeutic. Sometimes it's just allowing her, we do cookies sometimes, taking a cookie from your hand. But a lot of people they're a little sometimes intimidated by her. They don't really know how to interact. But we try to just allow, it's just petting. It can help calm people down. We went up to the police department one day for a visit, and there was a lady that was upset about something, and the lady just kind of petted Muffin and it helped her calm down. Just things like that. It's just very powerful to be able to interact with animals, and that's what kind of animal-assisted interventions are basically just allowing people to interact with an animal. And Pet Partners has this research paper that shows all the benefits of pet therapy in different settings, like the medical setting, the mental health setting, the crisis setting. You'll see therapy animals often at crisis situations, whether it's like a school shooting or a death that happened at the school, just to help the kids and parents and teachers cope. So there's a lot of different uses. It just hasn't been specifically in my research outside of Canada been used specifically with substance use and addiction and harm reduction. So not much in South Carolina that I know about.
So how can Muffin help with mental support and reducing stress and anxiety?
So I think the biggest thing with the substance use disorder and misuse is there's a lot of stigma with that and a lot of treatment. People might feel judged. They might not be ready to seek treatment or help, but they might want to know more and they might feel judged. And Muffin kind of helps to just make it not to be so hard and just support people and just bring a lot of joy. When we go to those meetings that people are at, people just get really excited to see her and they're just thankful that she came. And I think that helps because we want to make those environments where people are getting help more friendly and comfortable, and Muffin kind of helps to do that. And it doesn't have to be so scary. Petting a horse is not that intimidating once you get used to her and realize that she's really calm and relaxed. So I think that's something that she can definitely help with.
And what is the Muffin Cares program?
So basically it's kind of the umbrella, I guess, of what we've been speaking about. It's where we just go out. We have like different aspects where we specifically work with the organization that does recovery or treatment, or we kind of do general outreach, or we do like kind of just work visits where we go around the city of Cayce and visit the different offices and just try to bring a little joy. The firefighters as well, they really love her. And then specifically for outreach events like the library we're just trying to raise awareness about very important topics. Statistically, a lot more people are dying from drug overdoses in this area than fires. And fire safety will always be a priority, but we want to kind of prioritize the risk. And a lot of people are dying because they just don't know that, for example, fentanyl's in the drug supply. And even though they might not be purchasing a drug that necessarily should have that, it might be in there. And just trying to make people more aware of what's going on and just making better choices or more informed choices is kind of what we're about. So,
okay. If first responders want to know more about Muffin or the process of becoming a handler, who can they contact?
So we went through Pet Partners, so I would suggest you go to their website, learn more. And I do want to point out that I never got Muffin to be a therapy horse. I don't want anyone to just go out and get an animal. There's a ton of requirements, like you have to own them either for a year or 6 months, depending on species, for even eligible to test for the exam. I originally got Muffin to be a companion for a wild Mustang I had adopted, and she kind of helped that wild horse kind of relax and learn how to be a domestic horse. And as you can see, Muffin's very chill, helped that horse be chill, and now you never know that horse was wild. So I would do that. Muffin has a Facebook page. I could probably give you the link for that. And you can follow along on our journey. But basically that's pretty much it. Pet partners, anyone wants to contact me, I can give you my contact information about the steps to take. It's very, very strenuous to get where we're at, but there's other teams in the area, so what I would suggest is someone's interested in using this with their agency, maybe partner with an already established team to see if that's a good fit before you commit to an animal and all that, because it is a lot of care. And if Muffin didn't make a good candidate for therapy work, like, she'd always have a home. Like, it's not like I was gonna have to rehome her and find another horse. It was just something we tried, and God just worked it out that she was a good temperament for this type of work, and it was never my intentions to have a therapy horse, but here we are, and we're really excited to help a lot of people and spread a lot of hope and joy. So,
No matter if you work in a big jurisdiction or a small one, you've probably run into one of these signs on a regular basis. The South Carolina Department of Transportation works hard to keep our roads safe and handle the traffic demands of our state. Law enforcement officers, as well as 911 telecommunicators and dispatchers, play an important role in keeping the traffic flowing. We reached out to SCDOT to find out how law enforcement can help keep the work zone safe for our construction workers as well as the public.
Law enforcement has a couple of different roles in work zones. First and foremost, their visible presence with blue lights on are the best thing to improve the safety of the work zone. They manage the traffic queues. In other words, when traffic starts backing up, then they can reposition their vehicle to provide safety for not only the workers in the work zone, the general public, but also the law enforcement officers themselves.
Now, some of the construction zones have the concrete barriers on both sides of the lanes. How does this impede law enforcement and first responders from responding, and what's in place to help them be able to respond?
With coordination with the local contractor over that particular project, in some cases the barrier wall can be moved to allow first responders to access the scene. In other words, to treat patients and to be able to provide scene stabilization and overall safety. The other thing that responders can do in those situations are we have groups, pre-planned groups, whenever a new project begins. Coordination with all the first responders in that particular jurisdiction usually occur so they can plan for if there are situations in these particular work zones with barrier walls, whether they can move them or not. And in some cases we've had to, when all the lanes are blocked, we've had to coordinate to be able to have first responders travel the wrong way back to an incident. In other words, downstream from it and travel back to it to be able to access it. But all of that is done at a local level for each specific project.
Now, why is it important for officers to be aware of the construction in their jurisdictions?
Well, that's a very good question, because sometimes if they're not aware of that and they're used to responding to a particular incident on a certain route, and there they run up on the traffic queue for a construction project, we work very closely with first responder agencies all over the state to be able to provide information to them of future projects and ongoing projects so they can mitigate that and develop response plans that do not impede their response to particular incidents through a work zone.
Now, another group that we got to keep in mind are 911 dispatchers and telecommunicators. What is their role in everything as far as keeping all of you
when
safe?
they first get a 911 call for a situation in a work zone like that, the first thing for this situation, awareness, that is for the dispatchers, to know where the work zones are in their jurisdiction. So SCDOT website as well as 511 provide information to both of those to be able to know what's going on in their particular areas. So for a dispatcher, supervisor, or others to be able to check regularly DOT's website at 511, that will give them information that they can convey to the public.
And finally, if officers have additional questions or would like more information, who can they contact?
A couple different things are SCDOT call center or call 855-GO-SCDOT. Each project has a resident construction engineer, and the call center will be able to connect that first responder with the appropriate person.
With local, state, and national elections just around the corner, we wanted to take a look at some concerns that may come up with law enforcement on Election Day. There are some things to remember before heading out to your local polling place. TJ Lundeen with the South Carolina Election Commission sat down with lineup producer Jamie Collins to review law enforcement's responsibility when it comes to elections.
So I think the main concerns that we see with law enforcement on election days is trying to respond to incidents that may come up. One of the things that we have seen are poll workers or poll managers calling and law enforcement coming to a place and not knowing maybe the layout of that place or what areas of like a school or a community center are being utilized. And so you may report to like the main office of a school, but they're using the gym. So it's just one of those things where if a law enforcement officer is given that advanced information of where a place is being utilized or where voting's occurring, they're more likely and able to really respond to the right areas. So it's more of an area where communication is a critical part of it, where poll workers, poll clerks are in contact with law enforcement so that they understand where they should report to if they're called for any kind of incident or anything that occurs in that polling location.
Okay. Who's in charge of the polling places?
So a poll clerk would be the main person in charge of each polling place, and that's someone that would be someone who would call law enforcement if they have any kind of needs for an incident that would occur, or sometimes they call for traffic concerns or any sort of gathering that's happening that's within the different parameters of the law. They would call for that, so it would be a poll clerk.
And what kind of training do poll clerks or managers get in order to work at a polling place?
Yeah, so they have to go through some pretty extensive training, and it's before every election, so it's not something that just happens once a year, but actually before every election, poll clerks and poll managers have to go through training, and some of that includes de-escalation or how to talk to the public, how to interact with law enforcement, and just in general how to run a polling place.
Okay. What is law enforcement's role in the election day, and when may they enter the polling places?
Sure. So I think it's pretty similar to kind of every day for law enforcement, where you're kind of just on standby for anything that may come. So if a law enforcement officer isn't voting, then for them to go into a polling place, they would need to be called by a poll manager or a poll clerk. It's not something where they just kind of come in and stand in the corner. It's a situation where they need to be familiar with the polling place. They may do a walkthrough with the clerk early before they open, and then it's really just kind of being on standby and waiting for the call that hopefully doesn't come.
Can law enforcement officials wear their uniforms to polling places?
Yes, so especially in the line of duty, if they're called to a polling place, definitely want to have the uniform on. And then if they're going to vote in their own precinct, they're certainly allowed to wear their uniforms at that point.
Okay. And what are law enforcement officers not allowed to do on election day at polling places, for example, when a sheriff is running for re-election or something like that?
Sure. So the main thing would be no voter intimidation. So don't stand by the door and say, oh, you're coming to vote for so-and-so. You can't do that. Definitely don't want to do that. And then you don't want to have any kind of campaign materials within 500 feet of a polling place. So if their sheriff is running for re-election and they have a badge on that says vote for Sheriff so-and-so, that would not be allowed within 500 feet of a polling place. And then just in general, they would want to make sure that they're kind of responding to incidents as they come up, but not really going above and beyond that to being in the polling place. We have poll workers and poll managers that are there to greet folks, so it's really just a kind of being on call for when any kind of incident comes up.
Finally, why is it important for public safety officials to be familiar with the locations of the polling places in their jurisdictions?
Yeah, so it's really important for law enforcement officers to know what those polling places are. As we had said previously, if you're responding to an incident and voting's happening in the gym and you go to the main office of a school, for example, you're not responding to the right area. So if it's a health concern or if it's crowd control or just removing someone from a polling place, you're not where you're needed at that point. So it's really important for officers to be able to go to those polling places, know where they are, if they can get into those polling places before voters are allowed in there, and kind of walk with a poll clerk just to see, here's where we're going to be located, here's kind of our central area. They'll be better equipped to respond to any incidents that come up.
Well, that wraps up today's lineup. Before we go, we would love to hear from you. If you have any story ideas or comments, please send them to us. You can send them to cjastudio@sccja.sc.gov. Once again, that's cjastudio@sccja.sc.gov. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and have a great day.